Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill, back on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. Day 180 of Israel's war on Gaza. That's right. Since October 7th, Israel has mounted a nonstop genocidal war against the Palestinian people and against Gaza itself. And every day right here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we make sure that we cover that war. We make sure we cover the actions of the Israeli government. We make sure we give you the data, the information, the statistics, the statements, the policies that reflect and the depth and the pain of what's happened since October 7th. And so, as always, we do that not simply to spotlight the violence. We do that not merely to draw attention to what's wrong, but also so that we can come up with a durable solution. We have to get to a space of peace, a space of permanent ceasefire, but more importantly, long-term, a space of liberation, of justice, of self-determination, of freedom for the Palestinian people. And that only happens when we understand the true evidence and the true facts. And so day 180 of the war on Gaza, in many ways, is just like so many of the previous days. It's marked by continuous war, mounting death, and a recalcitrant global community. I want to begin specifically, though, with the numbers. I always say it's important to talk about the numbers. Since October 7th, 30,975 Palestinians have been killed, and 75,577 Palestinians have been wounded in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7th. Of course, the death toll in Israel from Hamas since October 7th remains at 1,139, with dozens of people still captive. Similarly, those Palestinian numbers are insufficient to the extent that there are about 8,000 people who remain under the rubble in Palestine. They remain under the rubble. So we're looking at probably at least almost 41,000 Palestinians who have been killed since October 7th. And while some people say those numbers are inflated, history shows us, the evidence shows us, the likelihood is that those numbers are actually low, but certainly within 4% of outside agencies' numbers. Let's talk about the latest developments, because those numbers go up because of the gross and grotesque violence that happens in the Gaza Strip every day. As you know, 7 people working for the aid group World Central Kitchen in central Gaza were killed. And it was obvious that they were killed by Israeli soldiers. And finally, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has addressed it. And he said that Israel mistakenly killed those 7 people. He said the airstrike was, quote, unintended and tragic. He said that, quote, these things happen in wartime. Now, that is already a cold statement when 6 human rights workers die by your army's guns who were completely innocent. And you say, well, these things happen during wartime. It's cold and callous. But it goes a step beyond cold and callous. It's also a lie. There was an investigation conducted by Al Jazeera's Sanad verification agency, and they found that the separate Israeli strikes on 3 WCK vehicles were actually intentional. That's important to point out here. It wasn't a single strike that just happened to kill 7 people. These were multiple continuous strikes that killed 7 people. And it's been deemed to be intentional. We'll have to look more into that. And certainly the International Criminal Court probably has something to say about it. At least 196 humanitarian workers, that includes more than 175 United Nations staff members, have been killed in Gaza since October. And that's according to the United Nations. On the other hand, Hamas has previously accused Israel of targeting aid distribution sites. So the idea here is you're killing people, right? You're killing people, and then you're also killing people through starvation. You're weaponizing food. And then you're killing the people whose job it is to bring the food in. This is, almost unheard of. Well, the UN Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territories, etc., says, Francesca Albanese, who I interviewed, you can see my interview with her on YouTube. She said, knowing how Israel operates, my assessment is that Israeli forces intentionally killed WCK workers so that donors would pull out and civilians in Gaza would continue to be starved quietly. Israel knows how Western countries and most Arab countries won't move a finger for Palestinians. That's a hell of a theory. I can't endorse her theory, but it's a hell of a theory, and it smells more right than wrong to me. And now WCK says it's going to pause its work in Gaza. They're also going to pause their work in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, which has financed the seaborne food deliveries to Gaza that were being distributed by the World Central Kitchen. So this is all part of the conversation. Also, reminding you that a UN World Bank report has placed the infrastructure damage in Gaza at $18.5 billion in the first 4 months. These numbers are stunning, and they are just critical. President Joe Biden has been speaking up more and more. Now he says that he was, quote, outraged and heartbroken by the attack on the World Central Kitchen convoy and called Israel to do more to protect aid workers. I'm glad Joe Biden's upset. I'm glad he's outraged. I'm glad he's acknowledging that this ain't right. But I also need him to point out some other things, some fundamental things. I need him to name Israel's actions as illegal, in addition to immoral. And it's not just protect aid workers. It's create the conditions so that aid is no longer needed. That's the point. So anyway, there's a lot more to talk about, but that is the gist of the Gaza update for you. I'm going to give you just a couple more bits of information, and then we're going to move on. Let's talk a little bit about some of the diplomatic stuff going on. Britain's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak told Netanyahu that the UK was appalled by the deaths, including some people from his country, and demanded a thorough and transparent and independent investigation and as international condemnation of this attack grows. Again, the WCK killing is indefensible. If this were any other country, we'd be having a very different conversation. Kenneth Roth, who's the former executive director of Human Rights Watch, called Biden's criticism of Israel's failure to protect aid workers in Gaza to be what? Empty words. And he's right. Kenneth Roth said it's empty words. That is that Biden doesn't care and ain't going to do much. The state of Palestine has written to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres requesting renewed consideration for its application for full UN membership. Now, one of my favorite things that happened today is that the White House had to cancel a Ramadan iftar because several Muslim Americans declined the invitation in protest of what's happening in Gaza. But it's not just that a couple people pulled out. They couldn't get a single Muslim in the building. The White House had to cancel an iftar because they couldn't find any Muslims. You know how hard it is? You know how bad you got to mess up that you can't give away food to Muslims in the evening of Ramadan? Like, come on, bro. You screwing up. Of course, in Israel yesterday, we also saw thousands of people protesting against the government, demanding a ceasefire and wanting the hostages back, the captives being held in Gaza back. They're also calling for an early election. Now, you would think that that kind of pressure would make Netanyahu end the war and be more peaceful, but it's quite the opposite. He knows his job is done once there's no longer a war. He's a wartime prime minister. Once there's no war, he won't be prime minister. So he has an investment in perpetual war. Anyway, we'll talk more about it tomorrow. Thank you for watching the Gaza update. I am exhausted, y'all. I'm going to take my behind the bed, but I appreciate y'all. And once again, I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you all for supporting it. I see new members. I see Victoria Temple. I see Samantha Twining is back. I see Gimme Gigi is back. I see Rosability is back. I see Meg is back. I see Victoria Temple is back. I want to thank all of you for coming back. And again, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're so inclined, hit the join button. Or if you want to donate directly to the channel, all you got to do is go to Cash App. And if you go to Cash App, you go MLH TV. And you can drop something in. Again, if all of you drop something in today, if we all drop $4 in, we'll be able to pay our bills for the evening and for tomorrow and for the rest of the week. I want to thank y'all for watching.